I always thought family dinners were supposed to bring people closer. In my family, they only reminded me of where I stood, outside the circle, watching through the glass. Growing up in Maple Creek, a quiet little town in Minnesota, I was the one who got the responsible label. My brother, Kyle, got everything else: the praise, the chances, the blind love. It used to bother me when I was younger, but I learned to live with it. I worked hard, left home, bought my own house, and built a life without depending on them. But every visit home reopened the same wound. Mom would talk about how proud she was that Kyle finally got his act together. Dad would nod, pretending to forget that I helped them pay their mortgage more than once. Still, I came to dinner that night because Mom said it was important family news. If I'd known what was waiting at that table, I might have turned my car around halfway there. The air in my parents' dining room always smelled the same: roasted chicken, lemon polish, and the faint bitterness of old resentment. Kyle was already there, smirking at me from across the table like he knew something I didn't. He had that smug charm he'd always had, the kind that fooled everyone but me. Mom fussed over him, spooning mashed potatoes onto his plate while mine sat empty. "You work too hard, sweetheart," she said to him. "You deserve a little rest." I sipped my water, trying to keep my voice calm. "So, what's the big news?" Dad cleared his throat, the kind of dramatic pause he used when he wanted attention. "Your mother and I met with our lawyer last week," he began. "We've decided to update our will." My stomach sank, but I didn't speak. Mom smiled like she was announcing a wedding. "We think it's only fair that Kyle inherits the house and the lake property. You're already doing well for yourself, honey." Her tone was sweet, but every word cut like glass. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at them, my parents, smiling as if they'd just told me I'd won a prize. Kyle leaned back in his chair, that same half-smirk curling on his lips. "Makes sense," he said casually. "You've got your job, your place. I'll take care of the family properties." I wanted to laugh, but my throat was tight. "Take care of them? You can't even take care of yourself," I said before I could stop myself. Mom frowned. "That's not fair, Emily. He's been through a lot. He deserves a chance." I looked at my father, hoping for a trace of guilt. Nothing. Just that same disappointed look he'd given me since I was old enough to outshine Kyle. Something broke inside me right then. Not just anger, something deeper. For 30 years, I'd been the one holding things together, paying bills when they forgot, cleaning up the messes Kyle made. That night, I realized they didn't want balance. They wanted me to stay small and quiet. Dinner went on like nothing happened. Mom asked if I wanted more salad, Dad told some story about his fishing trip, and Kyle laughed too loud at his own jokes. But I couldn't taste anything. My mind was spinning too fast. I wasn't hurt because of the money or the property. I was hurt because of the message behind it, that all my years of loyalty meant nothing. That my success made me less worthy, not more. When the plates were cleared, Mom reached across the table and patted my hand. "You understand, right? You've always been independent. We just want Kyle to feel supported." I pulled my hand back. "You mean you want him to keep being spoiled?" The room went quiet. Dad's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone," he warned. I smiled, though my heart was pounding. "Don't worry, Dad. I understand perfectly." Because in that moment, I did. They had made their choice, and soon, I would make mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying their words in my head: "Kyle deserves it. You're doing fine. You understand, right?" Every sentence was another reminder that I was never part of their plan, only their backup plan. I walked into my home office, the one I'd built from years of late nights and careful savings. On the wall hung a photo, me and my parents at my college graduation, their smiles brittle, forced. I'd been the first in our family to earn a degree. The same year, Kyle dropped out of college and crashed their car. They forgave him before the tow truck arrived. I stared at that photo until my anger settled into something sharper. Not rage, resolve. If they wanted Kyle to take care of the family properties, I would let him. But not the way they expected. I pulled out my old financial files, the ones that held every payment I'd made toward their mortgage. They wanted me out of the will. So I'd give them exactly what they asked for. The next morning, the fog outside matched the haze in my mind. I brewed coffee, but it tasted like metal. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom. "Hope you're not upset, honey. It's just fair for Kyle. Love you." Fair. That word did it. For years, I had sent them checks to help, pay for their roof repairs, their medical bills, their debts, all in the name of family. But fairness had never existed in that house. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank records. Every transfer to my parents was still there, stretching back almost a decade. Each one labeled neatly: mortgage support, utilities, home insurance. Over $48,000 in total. I scrolled through them slowly, one by one. My chest was tight, but my hands were steady. If they wanted to cut me out, then they'd lose the privileges that came with me, too. That was the first step. The second would take a little more planning. By the end of that week, I'd stopped every automatic payment I'd been making for them. The mortgage, the electricity, the property taxes, all gone. I didn't tell them. I wanted the silence to do the talking. At work, my coworker Natalie noticed something was off. "You okay, Em?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just doing some restructuring." She laughed, thinking it was a work joke. But I wasn't talking about spreadsheets. That evening, I drove past my parents' house. The porch light was off, but Kyle's new truck was parked up front, shiny, probably financed with another one of Dad's loans. I parked a block away and sat in the dark, watching the glow from their living room window. I imagined them laughing inside, comfortable, certain they still had me on their side. They didn't know I'd just cut the lifeline they'd been leaning on for years. And it felt good, quiet, dangerous good. The call came 2 weeks later. Mom's voice was shaky but sharp. "Emily, the bank sent us a notice. Did you stop the mortgage payments?" I leaned back in my chair, calm. "I did." "What? Why would you do that?" "We're 2 months behind now." I smiled faintly. "I thought you said Kyle would take care of things." There was silence, then a soft gasp. "Emily, don't be cruel. You know your brother's still trying to find work." "Then maybe this will help him try harder," I said evenly. She sputtered, "We can't afford this." "We thought." "That's the problem," I interrupted. "You thought I'd keep paying while you gave him everything. I'm just giving you what you asked for." The silence that followed was the most satisfying thing I'd ever heard. For the first time in years, they didn't know what to say. That was the moment the revenge began, not loud, not angry, but steady and precise. After that call, things changed quickly. A month later, I heard from the bank myself, an automated alert. The property taxes hadn't been paid. The insurance had lapsed. I didn't feel guilty. I'd done my part for years, and they'd repaid me with betrayal. Still, part of me wanted to see their reaction. So when Mom invited me for Sunday dinner, I went. I walked into their house and noticed the difference instantly: unpaid bills stacked on the counter, half-empty pantry shelves, tension in the air. Kyle looked pale and tired. "You happy now?" he snapped. "We're drowning." I met his glare. "You said you'd take care of everything, remember?" Dad slammed his fork down. "You're punishing us." I nodded slightly. "No, Dad. I'm just doing what you did. Taking care of myself." Mom's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't soften. Sometimes you have to let people feel the hole they dug, to finally see what they buried you under. That night, I got another message from Mom. We made a mistake. Please, we need help. Just until we get back on track. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Then I remembered sitting at that dinner table, watching them rewrite their will like I was a stranger. I typed back slowly. You said Kyle deserves everything. Let him prove it. Then I blocked her number. Over the next few weeks, I focused on my own life. I redecorated my house, took a promotion at work, and booked a trip I'd been putting off for years. Every small act of independence felt like a piece of myself returning. Meanwhile, news traveled fast in Maple Creek. I started hearing whispers that my parents were struggling, that Kyle was behind on his truck payments. People asked if I'd help them. I just smiled and said they wanted fairness. They got it. And that was only the beginning. 3 weeks after that last message, I ran into Mrs. Hartley at the grocery store. She was one of Mom's oldest friends, the kind who never kept a secret longer than her shopping list. Emily, she whispered, leaning closer. I heard your parents had some financial trouble. The bank's been calling. I kept my expression neutral. That's so? She nodded eagerly. It's awful. I told your mother years ago she shouldn't rely on one child for everything. But you know her. I smiled politely and changed the subject. Inside, though, I felt a slow burn of satisfaction. Not because they were struggling, but because they were finally living in reality. They'd always told people how proud they were of Kyle, how selfless he was. Now the truth was catching up to them, in bills, in gossip, in sleepless nights. I didn't have to lift a finger. My silence was doing all the work. And the best part? They still had no idea how far my plan was about to go. I didn't plan to destroy them, only to make them see what they'd created. But sometimes, justice doesn't stop halfway. I met with an attorney in town, a woman named Claire who'd helped me close on my house years earlier. When I explained my situation, she raised an eyebrow. Do you have proof of those payments? Every single one, I said, sliding a folder across her desk. She flipped through the pages, bank transfers, receipts, mortgage statements. You've effectively funded part of their property for years, she said. If they've now excluded you from the estate, that could be grounds for recovery. My heart pounded. Meaning what? Meaning, she said slowly, you can file for a lien against the house. You'd be repaid before it ever transfers to your brother. I sat back, stunned, then smiled. They wanted Kyle to have everything. But before he did, he'd have to pay me back every cent. Fairness, after all, works both ways. Filing the lien took a few days, notarized papers, proof of payment, a quick appearance at the county clerk's office. It felt surreal walking out of that building with justice folded in my purse. That evening, I got a call from Claire. It's official, she said. The lien is recorded. They can't sell, gift, or transfer that house without paying you first. For the first time in months, I laughed, not cruelly, but freely. 2 days later, Dad called. He must have received the notice from the county. His voice was sharp, almost trembling. What the hell did you do, Emily? Made things fair, I said simply. You're ruining us, he shouted. I closed my eyes. No, Dad. You ruined us when you decided one child mattered more than the other. The silence on the other end was long and jagged. Then the line went dead. I knew that click would echo for a long time, in his house, his conscience, his pride. From then on, the distance between us became a canyon. Mom stopped calling. Kyle unfriended me on social media. Neighbors whispered when I walked by. Some pitied me, others admired me. But I didn't care what they thought. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the background character in their story, I was the author. Claire called again a few weeks later. They tried to list the lake property, she said, but the buyer backed out when they saw the lien on record. Words spreading fast. I thanked her quietly. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, watching the sunset bleed over the town's rooftops. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. Because revenge, even when justified, doesn't erase history. Still, part of me knew this wasn't over yet. They'd built their world on favoritism. I'd just given it back to them, stripped bare. A month later, I got an invitation in the mail, cream paper, fancy gold lettering. Family dinner, please come. Let's talk. For a second, I almost tore it in half. But curiosity won. Maybe they were finally ready to face the truth. When I arrived, the house looked smaller. The grass was overgrown, paint peeling. Mom greeted me at the door with red eyes. Dad was quieter than I'd ever seen him. Kyle sat at the table, jaw tight, hands clenched. Mom started softly. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought you'd understand. I do understand, I said. You valued him more than me. You proved it. Kyle slammed his hand down. You've made this a nightmare, Em. You got your revenge. Happy? I stood, calm. Not happy, free. Then I turned to my parents. You wanted him to have everything. Now he does, debt, blame, and consequence included. And with that, I left them sitting in the house they'd chosen to burn. A few weeks passed after that dinner. I didn't call, didn't text. But in a small town like Maple Creek, silence speaks louder than shouting. Rumors grew like weeds. Someone told me Dad had been seen arguing with the bank manager. Someone else said Kyle's truck got repossessed. I didn't celebrate. I just kept living. Every morning, I'd walk past the mirror and see a version of myself I hadn't known in years, calm, steady, unapologetic. At work, Natalie grinned at me one morning. You're glowing, she said. New skincare or new peace? Peace, I said simply. But that peace came at a price. Some nights, I still heard Mom's voice in my head, you understand, right? I did. And that's why I couldn't go back. Because understanding doesn't mean forgiving. Sometimes it means finally seeing who someone really is, and letting them live with it. One Saturday afternoon, I drove past the lake property, the one they'd promised to Kyle. The for sale sign was still out front, tilted and weather-beaten. I parked by the road and stared at the water. It was beautiful, calm, silver under the late summer sun. I'd spent so many weekends there as a kid, fishing with Dad, swimming with Kyle, believing we were a normal family. Now, the silence was different. It wasn't peace, it was emptiness. I thought about how they'd changed the will that night, so proud, so sure they were doing what was right. And I realized something important. They hadn't just chosen Kyle. They'd lost me. They didn't even understand what that meant yet. But they would. Because family isn't about who gets the house. It's about who you can call when you have nothing left. And when their world fell apart, they wouldn't have me anymore. One morning, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, Kyle was standing there. He looked older, not in years, but in wear. His hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled. Can we talk? He said quietly. I stepped aside. Go ahead. He sat at my kitchen table, the same way he used to when we were kids. For a moment, I saw the brother I'd once defended, not the man who'd watched me get erased. I messed up, he said finally. Mom and Dad, they're selling the house. They can't pay the bills. I tried to help, but he stopped. I can't. I folded my arms. You don't say. His eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. I didn't know they were going to change the will like that. I swear. I studied him for a long time. Maybe not. But you didn't stop them either. He looked down, shame heavy in his shoulders. When he left, he didn't look back. And somehow, that hurt more than I expected. That evening, I got another call, this time from Aunt Marla. She'd always been the quiet one in the family, but she never missed a detail. Emily, she said, your parents' house is in foreclosure. The auction's next month. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Not from guilt, from shock. I hadn't thought it would happen so soon. Marla continued, they're embarrassed. Won't talk to anyone. Your mom's been asking around if you'd help. I closed my eyes. I could picture her, fragile, desperate, holding on to the image of control she'd always needed. I wanted to say yes, to save them, again. But then I remembered every time they'd looked at me like I was less. And I said softly, no, Marla. They made their choice. The silence that followed was thick with understanding. For once, I didn't need to explain myself. Some debts can't be paid with money. Only lessons. The foreclosure made the local paper. I saw the headline while buying coffee. Longtime Maple Creek family loses home after financial struggles. They didn't name them, but everyone knew. People whispered, pitted, speculated. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the stars, thinking about how quiet revenge really is. It's not fire and fury, it's patience. It's the echo of choices finally coming home. I didn't feel proud or giddy. I felt balanced. Like the universe had straightened something crooked. A week later, I got a plain envelope in the mail. Inside was a handwritten note from Mom. We're sorry. We didn't see what we were doing until we lost it all. You were right. Take care of yourself. No signature. No number. Just that. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it into my drawer, and whispered to the empty room. I already am. 2 months passed after the letter. By then, my parents had moved into a small rental outside town. I didn't see them. I didn't need to. But Maple Creek was small, too small to avoid everything. At the grocery store one afternoon, I saw Mom standing in line ahead of me. Her hair was thinner, her shoulders slumped. For a moment, she didn't notice me. Then our eyes met. She froze, clutching her purse tighter. I expected anger, or guilt. Instead, I saw something else, emptiness. She nodded once, almost a bow, and turned away. When she left, I exhaled shakily. My hands trembled, not from fear, but release. That silent acknowledgement was all I needed. She finally understood. Not about money, or inheritance, about me. You can't keep someone small forever. Eventually, they outgrow the space you left them in. And once they walk away, they never come back the same. Kyle left town soon after. Someone told me he moved to Chicago, chasing another fresh start. I hoped he found one. Despite everything, he was still my brother, just one who'd never learned how to stand without someone holding him up. As for my parents, I heard they stopped talking about family legacy. The lake property was sold to cover debts. The house, the one that used to hold every Christmas, every argument, every fake smile, belonged to someone else now. One evening, I drove by it one last time. The porch light glowed a soft gold, but not for me. New curtains hung in the windows. Laughter echoed faintly from inside. It hit me then, the house had moved on. And so had I. Sometimes closure doesn't come from fixing what's broken. It comes from walking past it, finally free of the need to knock again. When the holidays came, I didn't visit. Instead, I booked a cabin near Lake Superior, small, quiet, and mine alone. The air was cold, sharp with pine. I spent the first night by the fire, sipping cocoa, thinking about everything that had happened. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd cut ties with my parents, I'd have laughed. Back then, I thought love meant endurance. That if I just kept proving myself, they'd see me. But love without respect isn't love. It's servitude dressed in sentiment. Outside, the lake reflected the stars, endless, peaceful, detached. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I felt whole. That night, I wrote one line in my journal. I didn't lose my family, I just stopped belonging to people who never really saw me. Spring came quietly. Work was thriving, and I finally took the promotion I'd been too distracted to accept before. Life moved in calm waves, steady, earned. One morning, I got an email from Claire, my attorney. The lien was satisfied, she wrote. Your parents paid off the balance through the sale proceeds. You're officially cleared. I read it twice. It meant they'd settled their debt, literally and figuratively. I closed my laptop and looked around my house. Sunlight poured through the windows, catching on the framed photo of me at graduation, the one where their smiles never reached their eyes. I didn't feel bitterness anymore. Just gratitude that I had finally stepped out from under their shadow. Some victories don't come with applause. They come with peace, paid in full. One Sunday morning, nearly a year after that dinner, I sat on my porch with coffee, watching the world wake up. Birds fluttered in the maple tree, the same kind that lined the street where I grew up. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I just existed. Free. I thought about Mom's last letter, about Kyle's tired eyes, about the girl I used to be, desperate for their approval. She was gone now. In her place was someone stronger, quieter, wiser. If my parents ever changed their will again, it wouldn't matter. Because the only inheritance worth keeping is self-respect. I lifted my mug and whispered to the morning. You wanted fairness. You got it. Then I smiled, not out of triumph, but peace. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't what you take. It's what you refuse to give back.